Welcome to Play Hard and Love Big Radio. My name is Nick Clark. I am your host for today's show. Play Hard and Love Big Radio is the official podcast of Spotted Dog Yoga and SUP based out of Folsom, California. You can check us out at spotteddogyoga.com. On Play Hard and Love Big Radio, we're dedicated to bringing you the inspirational people and their stories to help you connect to your center so that you can go out and live your most purposeful and passionate life. And today I have a new friend with me on the show, and I'm so excited to share her with you. Seychelle, or Seychelle SUP is her brand name if you'd like to look her up. Seychelle is a two-time world champion. She's the current fastest woman in the world on a paddleboard. She also holds a Guinness World Record for the most miles paddled in a 24-hour period, which I'm excited to hear about too. She's over time developed the ability to be very active and passionate and fiery about what it is that she does, but she's been able to create balance so that she can create health and optimal performance. And we're so blessed to have you here with us today, Seychelle. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Nick. I feel really honored to be here as well.
Something else I didn't mention is that you're a yoga teacher too, right?
Yes, I am technically a yoga teacher, although I haven't taught in many years outside of classes that I teach when I'm hosting a women's retreat, which I do host women's SUP and yoga retreats. So, side story, I got into stand-up paddleboarding teaching SUP yoga. So yes, I am a yoga instructor. It just feels like that's a little bit removed from where I focus or practice at the moment.
And you grew up in the Florida Keys, is that right?
That's right. I grew up in the Florida Keys. Mm-hmm.
What was that like? What was your life like growing up in the Florida Keys? It seems like an amazing place to grow up.
It's an amazing place to grow up. I grew up on the water. Always had a love of the water and the ocean. You're never that far from it when you're in the Keys, which is something that I didn't really realize or understand growing up because I didn't know any better, right? So I had a pretty normal childhood, went to public school, played sports, did lots of extracurricular activities. And so, not that much different than I would think what you would experience in terms of in terms of what a childhood would be, except for that we just, probably more of our activities were around the water, being out on the boat and stuff like that on the weekends. My family always owned sailboats. I did a lot of sailing with my parents, just like in the summer more so. Then during the year, like friends had boats, we would go out and go wakeboarding or my dad was a boat captain, so he was out at the reef every day. So sometimes we'd go out and go, snorkeling or diving at the reef. So that was pretty cool. I was really into soccer. That was my thing. I played year round, wanted to go pro and that was my biggest focus, I would say, in my childhood.
Well, that's interesting. That was also my biggest focus growing up as a kid. Yep. And I wanted to go pro, and I did for just like a brief instance, like a speck of time. And then it didn't work out the way that I planned, but it taught me a lot, that's for sure. So that's cool. What position did you play?
Center D.
Center D. Okay. My best friends, I was a goalkeeper.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're right there.
Right. Like my best friends to this day are my buddies that I played. They were right in front of me, they were just running into me or bashing it out with their heads, so
yeah.
How funny.
I did not go pro. I mean, I was doing like Olympic trials for the Olympic, the youth development team. But I turned 17 and I just had a series of injuries, and I just got over it. And it happens a lot, I think, with young athletes, and I see it in stand-up paddling. You have these like really young athletes with a lot of potential, and then you hit about 17 years old and it's something in the teenage brain where it's like, well, I either have to like be pro or give it all up. Like there's no middle ground. And I gave it all up.
Yeah. And I mean, even at that, I agree, at that age that happens. And then even later on, like when I went through the college program, it was like kids that I played with in college. It was like, once the senior year was over, they were done. I think it just kind of, as the levels go up, a lot of people decide, okay, like I need to focus on other aspects of my life or what's something that's more important for me, or I've got all these injuries and I can't just be beat up all the time. Like that was I hated being beat up all the time, which is part of the reason I started getting into SUP. That was a good squirrel moment. I like that moment, Seychelle. So tell me a little bit about how your journey to stand-up paddleboarding happened. I know that you took a trip on boats around the world and did that for a little while, and then ultimately you ended up you're in Melbourne Beach, Florida, and you're paddling like a wild woman and making waves, literally making a difference in the sport for females and also for males, and just you're doing awesome. So how did your story come to be, and how did you end up getting on a paddleboard and doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so I can give an abridged version of, what's a really long story, really, because it's like a, half-life story.
Your
um,
whole life. Yeah.
right, because I mean, you even said like, yes, I took off from, I didn't go to college. I took off on a sailboat and was headed around the world, and then ended up not making it all the way around the world, but working professionally on boats for the next like 7 or so years, traveling all around and getting my captain's license, and which I still hold, a U.S. Coast Guard 100-ton master's license. So that's a fun fact about me. I always joke like that, I am still the master of my vessel, but the vessel's only like 14 feet long now instead of, 100 feet. So took off sailing for a few years, and then ended up moving back to the Keys. I got married, got divorced, moved back to the Keys to just rethink life as you do when you're going through a major change like that. And I had a paddleboard that I was using to just tool around and do some yoga, and was looking for new friends, and hooked up with the owner of the local paddleboard shop, Paddle the Florida Keys, and went out paddling with him, and he was like, "You're you're pretty good at this, on your 11-foot, sup surf," and he's on a race board, right? And he's like, "You're pretty good at this. Yeah, I need some help with the shop. Do you want to come? Do you need a job?" And I was like, "Yes. I need everything right now." And so I took a job at the local paddleboard shop, and they were like, "You're really fit. You should try this. You should try racing. We're training to do these races." They were training, the guys at the shop were training for some paddleboard races. This was back in 2014, and which was kind of like the heyday of like the growth of the sport of SUP, right? Like the biggest growth phase was like 2012 to 2016, or maybe it was 2010 to 2015 or whatever. But so it was right, when the sport was just like expanding wildly. And so they were like, "You should train with us." So hopped on a race board and trained with them in the morning. I hadn't been an athlete, I guess technically as a sailor, as a professional athlete, but I hadn't been a competitive athlete since high school. But I stayed fit and active. I always was. I really and still do enjoy running, and that's a way that I've always cross trained. So I stayed active running, and then of course I've done yoga since I was like maybe 15. So that's probably now the thing in my life I've been doing the longest. But so I got on a race board, trained with them for a few weeks, and they, did my first race, and I won. And I was just like, when you just know something was meant to be, and something was just meant for you, and something in your life just comes full circle and connects, and you're like, this is what I've been like waiting for, and that's really how the sport of SUP felt like, and came to me, and found me, because it all happened really fast. I'm getting emotional because it is really emotional for me. It all happened really, really fast in this sport, because I just thought, well, I love working out. I love training. And now I can be that. I can go and do that on the water. I don't have to run next to the side of the road. In the Florida Keys, we don't have trails. You can't go trail running, or you can't be out in nature. You have to run on the side of the road, and it's fucking hot. Excuse my language. I don't know if you guys on this podcast. But and then I was like, oh my gosh, I could go do this and be out on the water and be out on the ocean and be with, I was going to say my people, but I guess the fish and the, whatever, and the birds, those are my people. When I'm out there training, they are, because I'm out training by myself. And so I was just hooked, and decided, like, almost immediately that I was going to go pro, and that's what I was going to do, and just became obsessed with the sport. And that's what I did. So I started teaching SUP yoga at the shop. I was doing, from the first day after I met the owner of the shop, I was leading tours of the shop, and then just started training and going to races. And by the end of the year, I started doing the training for the 24-hour paddle. And that was the segue into, becoming a professional athlete, and really realizing, like, my childhood dream of being a professional athlete. I just didn't know that I had to totally let that go and find a whole new sport that was actually where it was meant to be and meant to happen,
It came to you in a new form.
Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting. No, I got emotional with that too. In your story, it is neat when those moments happen where you're like, wow, this is meant for me,
Yeah.
Neat.
And I needed something at that time in my life. If anybody's gone through a major loss of a divorce or a lot of family, or just, hit rock bottom in some way, like, you have to rebuild. And I found SUP, and I rebuilt through that sport of, like, just devoting to that, right? And it really got me through, and so.
And you talked about the training for the 24-hour race. That's pretty phenomenal. What was it? About 110 miles is what you ended up paddling?
Yeah, so it was, and I would say still to this day, it's the most incredible thing I've ever done. It's 110 miles in 24 hours is an average of, I think like 4.8 miles per hour or something. And that's including rests, right? So really the average moving speed was much faster, which is, for somebody who doesn't race stand-up paddling, it's probably faster than you're ever going to paddle if you're paddling as fast as you could possibly go for 24 hours. I trained a long time for it because we ended up postponing when we ended up doing it. So I trained for a long time, and I had a lot of support. And, I made it. There's been a couple women and a couple of men that have done it since, paddled for 24 hours and paddled a bit further, but no one's since made it officially, like, sanctioned a Guinness official world record, which is because of how many loops and hoops you have to go through to get Guinness to approve it. And so there was a whole support team of people helping me, in the event and even afterwards to make that happen. It was at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida, which is, fun fact, where the ICF World Championships is going to be this year for stand-up paddle. It's made for rowing. It's a man-made lake that's designed for doing rowing competitions, and one lap around is almost exactly 5K, and I did 37 laps, so I just kept going around and around and around and around and around and around. Yeah, pretty awesome experience.
Can you recall some of the physical and mental challenges that you faced? What was that like, and how were you able to overcome any of those that came up for you?
Yeah. Physical, it's hard to separate when you get to a point where you're just so exhausted. What is the physical exhaustion, the mental exhaustion, the emotional exhaustion? I mean, I was just tired. I started at noon. And I was great through the day. And then, sometime after midnight, I mean, it was just beyond physically being sore. You really, if anybody's ever done an ultra endurance event, if you're sore, you hurt everywhere. But you get to a point, and I think to be an ultra endurance athlete, you have to get to a point where you're physically or where you're mentally able to, you just don't even feel it anymore. Like if you think about it, you're like, I hurt everywhere, but you can't think about it. Because if you think about it, you have to slow down, and then it hurts even more because you're thinking about it. I actually really haven't talked to that many endurance athletes about this, but I've read books from, people like David Goggins, crazy mother effers that are
Yeah.
way more crazy than I am. But you really just like when things like physically hurt, like that's the least of your worries. Like that's not, you have to get past that. And actually what I do is I go harder, and then I'm like, oh great, it doesn't hurt anymore. It's a weird thing. Totally not applicable to like a 10K.
Yeah.
Maybe it is applicable to a 10K, but it's like this ultra endurance state where you have to be beyond physical pain, because everything does hurt. But then there's just like the exhaustion. I mean, I remember being like totally sobbing in tears around 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, I just don't want to do this. Like, I'm so tired. Like, everything hurts. Like, this sucks. But never was I like, I'm gonna quit or I want to quit. Like, I don't have that.
Yeah.
I don't have that button fuse. I don't like, I'm not like, I don't quit. I've done a lot of ultra endurance events, and I get to the point where I'm like having a full meltdown. Like, I'm full meltdown mode, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
quit.
Yeah. It's awesome
um
quality. I love it.
so my at that point, it was he was just my boyfriend at the time. He's my husband now. He was the only one with me for a while during those hours of the wee hours of the morning. But when you asked how did I get through it, was really the people that were with me supporting me. Like, I was almost never in the water alone. Somebody was always like paddling with me, or like following me on a boat, and like right there with me, like talking to me, cheering me on. And that's another reason why, like, you just, there wasn't a doubt in my mind that I was going to quit. Because you can share energy with people, right? Like, we're connected in that way. And I was doing it for a fundraiser, and I would think about the people. I was raising money for the Special Olympics, and I was thinking about the Special Olympics, and I was like, if I stop, then what about them? And so there's
Right.
like, you always make it bigger than you too.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
something's bigger than you, it's a lot easier to do things that are really fucking hard.
No doubt about it. Wow. Yeah.
And then once the
Makes
sun came up, I was good. Then I was like, all right, sun's up. We're home stretch. So
Sun's out, guns out, home stretch. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. No, thanks for walking me through that. I love how you talk to the power of community. I know that I've read some things that you've posted about the power of community. Can you talk about how community has been important for you in your life and in your growth?
yeah, I mean, that's one of the ways, right? Whenever I'm faced with something that's extremely challenging, or really challenging in any way, leaning on the power of community, making it not about me. And really, I would say everything in my, you know, not everything in my life, but everything that I like sort of strive for, I'm building towards, right? The reasoning is always bigger than me. The reasoning is always about a greater community that I want to serve. And so it's reciprocal. Like, I lean on them for energy, for accountability, for emotional support or cheerleading, right? But then I guess it's also kind of leaning on it, but making it like where it's like, I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing this for them. And that is so much stronger of a why. If anybody's ever experienced like that, when you really need to dig deep, and whether that's like to face challenges in your work, it doesn't have to be dig deep in a paddle, like, or a physical way, but any sort of dig deep to get through any sort of challenge in life, leaning on doing it for like a reason that's for a them as opposed to a for me is so much more powerful. And not that I'm just using that, but I really do feel that what I'm doing is for a greater purpose,
Yeah.
than what, I'm living my life and my experience as an athlete and growing as an athlete and as a human and as a woman as a means to gain experience that I can use to elevate those that I serve. And so that could be in my stand-up paddle community or the greater stand-up paddle community. I have a small community on the Seychelle SUP app, or the community of athletes that I work with in my coaching programs. But also, like, I love to speak to the entire community on social media, and or just at events in meeting people in person. It's one of the reasons why I've always loved this sport so much, is the community. And one of the things that I hear people say they love the most about this sport is the community. I also have communities outside of stand-up paddling that I'm a part of. Most recently, being a part of a women's community has been a really big part of my life, and finding balance that you spoke of in the beginning, to where I'm not just working myself into injury and into a pulp all the time. Like, I'm really doing what I'm doing from a place of wholeness and love. And that takes having, I think, different communities, but definitely that balance of the athlete in me, and then also like the wife and the mother, and then also like just the woman. And when we get so fixated on being just one thing, it can feel really hard or limiting or constricting or pressure. And when we remember and uh, to be all the aspects of ourselves, we're a lot more expanded and opened, and things actually feel easier.
It's like yin and yang,
Yeah.
or at our studio we teach power yoga classes, but we also have yin classes. The balance between the two of those things, I feel like, helps create more wholeness in people's approach to life. And I also, what I love that you said too is that you're connected to a community that is more on the side of like feminine power, like the relaxed, easeful approach to life. And then, of course, you're in a community that is a little bit more driven, masculine power, right? Like, but you have different communities that help support your health and finding balance. And that's amazing. And I think a lot of people do get stuck maybe just in one community, and then they forget like another community could be really helpful and help in allowing them to find balance, but more clarity, more ease, more health, more longevity, more vitality, all those things.
Yeah. I like to think of it as like a pendulum. And like on the one side is the yang, or the masculine, or the like go, like hard energy. And we need that for like our grit and our determination and our discipline and our plan of action. And like, it's really important. And it's something that it's very strong, and then on the other side is the yin, or the feminine, and that's our flow and our creativity and our openness and our softness and our our desires, and there's so many more aspects I could link of the two, but it's like there's a pendulum, and my little piece of the pendulum was like stuck over here. And I think a
Wow.
lot of people, women especially, who they're mothers and they work and they have to take care of the home and they have to take care of the house and they have to like do all the things. and also in our society, we've really been taught to value this, doing all the things and not the like slowing down and being soft. And so it's very easy to not only to get stuck over here, but just to feel like you have to be over here because you don't value over here. And so my little pendulum was really stuck over here, and I went through a series of injuries, and then the next level of it was miscarriages that I had on the way to becoming a mother, and all of these things that really taught me, reminded me how important it is to let your pendulum swing, and like, you don't have to be all the way over here, and you don't have to be all the way over here, but you need to not be stuck. And then most of the time you kind of want to be like balance in the middle, because you're able to go flow back and forth, and one of the first things that really helped me remember that was like, I was always one to like work really hard and get injured, and I was saying that was like one of the reasons why I ended up quitting soccer in my youth, was like just getting fed up with like feeling like it had to be a certain way, like I had to be pro or nothing at all, right? And then this is interesting, this is the first time I've kind of linking these two pieces together. It was very similar in my stand-up paddle career, where I was like, it has to be a certain way, and I have to, do these certain events with these specific results and be this, and I was like hurting, like there was like my body, pain is a message from your body, which in an ultra endurance event, you can blank that out, but like most of the time you want to listen to those messages. And my body was in pain, and I wasn't listening, until, one day in early 2019, I literally broke. I had traumatic 3 herniations in my neck. And it was literally like I woke up that morning, and then I was like, something's not right, which something had been bothering me for a long time. Really, it had been bothering me for years, but it'd been getting worse. And then, but literally it was like waking up, right? The straw that breaks the camel's back. Tried to stretch it, and was just like everything. I don't know what happened, but it was the most, I don't know if anyone's had herniated discs, but having 3 of them in your neck, like, it was the most excruciating experience of my entire life. And I was in so much pain. I couldn't move. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sit. I couldn't stand. I couldn't do anything. Right. I got some imaging done. I showed it to several different doctors because I didn't like what the doctors kept telling me, which is like, you need surgery. And some of them gave me, most of them were like, you need it now. Some of them gave me the, like, it's not if, but when. Try these other things, but your neck's pretty. I tried the other things, and while I was laid up in bed with nothing, without being able to do anything for a few weeks, I did the physical therapy, and I rested, and the traction, and all the things that like the doctors would recommend. And then I also did the metaphysical aspect of healing, which was, that what was the mental and emotional causes of where I was at. And what I realized is that I was really trying to force an outcome, really trying to do something a very specific like way, really like just being so hard and putting so much pressure on myself until I literally couldn't take it anymore, and I broke. And what the biggest aspect of my healing process was just learning to relax, to slow down, to take the pressure off. And I did a lot of meditating and visualizing. I actually literally visualized, like I had the images of my MRI, and I looked at images of a healthy spine, and I literally visualized, like my spine becoming a healthy spine, and those, my discs absorbing I forget even what they're called now. It's only 5 years ago, but absorbing them back in, and just visualizing my body healing itself, along with doing physical therapy and the rest, and all the things that. And so I really did all the things. I really did treated my healing just like I would have treated my training or my job, which it was at the time. And I've never had the surgery, and I've never, like, every once in a while I feel like a little flare up in my neck, and I know it's times where I'm feeling stressed and I'm feeling tense and I'm putting pressure on myself, and I'm like, oh, there it is. Let it go. And and it's become a big part of who I am and how I choose to show up as an athlete, especially. But I guess also as a mother, as a woman, and just as a human in this world, is like not focused on the results, not focused on or having expectations, um, but really as a whole being, um, which means that I get to work really hard and train really hard and have a lot of um, I've also, in the last few years, I've built a business. It's taken a lot of planning and a lot of action and a lot of work. And I also take time to like have a quiet, slow morning, even with a 2-year-old. Like
Yeah.
I take my like quiet, slow mornings because for me, that's what I really need. And I don't let the expectations of, people and outside of my family or even my sponsors or anyone and their expectations and their pressure affect me, right? Like I know that whatever happens at a race or an experience is exactly what's meant to happen um because of the experiences that you're meant to learn, especially when you have a challenge that you're going
Mm.
through, which would be any time that you show up and don't have the experience you're hoping for, which really only happens when you set yourself up because you have an expectation and then you get let down. So it's like the first thing is not having the expectation and not putting that pressure on yourself, but also, um, yeah. And I guess you're getting the lesson either way, but it's whether or not you're like just you're like ready for it, or you have to like learn it the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my gosh. I've had a
um,
lot of those. I've had a lot of those moments,
yeah,
learning it the hard way.
yeah, for sure.
But what's really amazing and phenomenal about what you're talking about is that, well, and neat that it came to light a little bit, is that you discovered that pattern that you had with soccer
Hmm.
was carried forward through all those years and times into your paddling, and then ultimately, like, something you love, something you're destined for, it, you just feel it in your bones, and then ultimately you got an injury, and then from the injury you were able to learn and shift and recreate your life. I mean, I've heard that it's pretty cliche, I guess, but it's your injuries can be your greatest teachers. And it
Mm-hmm.
seems to me like that's happened for you. And now it seems like your approach to life is just so much more easeful. And so, how has it impacted? I mean, obviously, you just won the world championship again. How has it impacted the way that you paddle and train um, and the way that you feel after you paddle and the way that you feel before you paddle and while you're paddling? Like, how has it impacted your sport?
One of the biggest impacts this this type of shift has had on me is that um and this is something that I don't actually know how a male will resonate with this. And so you could let me know, and I think everyone's going to be a little bit different based off of where we are on our pendulum at any given time, but like one of the biggest shifts for me has been replacing the word discipline, and really the not just the word but like the embodiment of discipline with the embodiment of devotion. And so to answer your question of like how has that affected how I feel before, during, after paddling, um is like I really have it's not I'm not coming to it from a place of like of discipline, like this is the work that needs to get done. It's like I'm coming to it from a place of devotion, of like I'm really devoted to what this is and why I do it and what, like how it's affecting me, but also like the greater world or my family, how it's helping my business or my this stand-up community, how it's affecting them through, witnessing my journey, whatever it might be. I really have found a lot more of a spiritual connection to everything that I do, including like how I show up and, for my training on my board, and how I'm showing up for a race. Like I literally, and it's, in some ways it almost feels like, not necessarily cheating, but it's like, if you can literally say it's not up to me, it's up to like whatever's meant to be, the divine, the highest good, God, however you want to say it, right? Like my responsibility is to show up, and what happens with that isn't my responsibility. And it's so the whole thing about taking the pressure off, I mean, that's just like, whew, like all I got to do is show up and do, like, and so like I'm a coach, I write training programs, but I also hire a coach to write my training program because I don't want to make those decisions. I just want you to tell me what to do. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do it.
Yes,
No,
perfect.
like I don't have to overthink it. I don't have to stress about it. I just have to show up and do it. And then whatever happens with that isn't my responsibility, right? And where we get stuck, and where I used to get stuck, was feeling like whatever happens with that is also my responsibility, and I have to, it's like, it's not. Just like be like, in the moment, do your best, and what happens with that is what happens with that. And sometimes it's a world title and you win, and sometimes and sometimes it's like sixth place and you're like, well, fuck that one up. But it just doesn't, it's like, but it doesn't like, you don't beat yourself up. I don't beat myself up anymore. I just beat myself up. I don't. I go, what happened? Okay, cool. Well, this is what happened in that moment. And it's like, you instead of coming from it from a place of like distress, you come to it from a place of like, okay, what can I learn from this? And it's like, boom, there's the lesson. Well, thank you. Then that was exactly what was supposed to happen.
Yeah. I love that you share that. You know what I have to say, Seychelle, like having this conversation with you has been life-changing for me. I feel like it's like almost been a personal coaching session, because I am a devoted person, very devoted to our business, devoted to our community, devoted to making a difference for people, out that, doing something that where I'm up to something bigger than myself. I'm devoted to that, but I struggle finding the balance between, or the making a change between discipline and devotion. I struggle because I want to be successful. I want to put, food on the plate and support my family. And so I get caught up working too hard. Like I get stuck on that pendulum over here, and it catches up to me. And just very recently, I was just grinding, and I ended up getting pneumonia, and it knocked me out for a month. And it was scary. Like, you hear about pneumonia. Have you ever had pneumonia?
I haven't, no, but
I mean, you hear about it, and it's like it can kill somebody, especially somebody that's older, right? And so, but I'm a young, healthy guy, and I got pneumonia, and I couldn't do anything, and I could hardly breathe, and I was scared. My heart rate went really fast. Like, it scared me. Similar to your injury, it really made me, like, I prayed, and I was like, I am committed to changing who I am and doing things differently and paying attention to my health. My health is all that matters. And so I feel like I'm really shifting in that pendulum to a place of more of balance. But I love what you're saying about devotion. It's approaching everything with devotion, and knowing that whatever happens, and having faith that things happen for a reason. Like this conversation is, for me, is really happening for a reason. A lot of things are opening up for me. And I feel very connected to you. I feel like just talking to you, I can feel your ease, and like I just feel grounded, and that's what I want to be as a person, and that's who I am at the core as a person, is somebody who's like that. So as you know, you asked like how a male may respond to that, and I think that my hope is that in the same way that you want to encourage females to be in their power, I'm the kind of guy who wants to encourage men to be in their power, and I feel like having an approach like devotion and creating a balance in that pendulum between masculine and feminine energy is something that I'm committed to being as a person, so that I can bring that to more men and women, of course. But like, I think it takes some vulnerability and courage to step into that realm as a man, and it can sometimes be tough because we like want to provide and we want to be successful, and we feel like the weight can be on our shoulders. And I just don't think that most people, myself included, have always understood that ease can help us get where we want to go. Devotion and being up to something bigger than ourselves can help us get where we want to go. And then the opposite side of that actually can make it harder to get where we want to go when you're trying to force it. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it, right? It's taking yourself, yeah, from discipline to devotion doesn't actually take away from all of the things that you have to do or that you're doing, but it helps you show up for them with ease as opposed to with, anxiety or pressure. And then your performance, and this is something I say to my athletes all the time, your performance is always going to be the best when you're the most relaxed.
Mm.
And stress and pressure actually is a performance decreaser. That's not the right word, but and relax and ease is actually a performance enhancement. And that's for a a race, but that's for a hard work day as well. And it's so hard, right? Like I say these things, but it is a challenge. And I definitely still, like, we have an unusual situation in our home where, like, I actually am the provider. So, like, my coaching business and my paddling career is how our family is supported. So, like, I come at it from that way too, Nick, like understanding, like, I have to do this, like, otherwise, like, because we have a 2-year-old and my husband, he left his job last year. He's having some, mental health struggles, but he's not struggling with being a dad and being a really good, you know, go home, like, taking care of our house and our family. So it's interesting, like, I can identify maybe even more so, like, we all, there's no, like, there's never like a set role of, like, it looks like this or it looks like that or it feels like this or it feels like that. It's like finding
Right.
what works for you, but, like, the application of, like, of the energy, of devotion over discipline. For me, that's, like, one of the biggest things that's helped. I forget what your exact question was, but
I don't even think I asked the question. This has been so fun talking with you. And Reg, really, I haven't done a podcast in the last year where I've had tears come up 3 different times. So, thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the one thing you said early on too, and I want to talk about this, and I want to let you talk about your coaching and also about the fact that you're going to be in Northern California doing some sessions coming up this summer. But you said, and it's so true, that our energy is transferable. And talk about being up to something bigger than ourselves, right? Like, if you and me and people can learn to create ease and balance and approach life like you're speaking to, with a focus on devotion, less than discipline. Like just being in our presence, like I said, being in your presence, I feel grounded. I feel like I can slow down. I feel better. I feel like I can just allow my emotions to come up and to experience them. And that impact is humongous, especially in community, and how we talked about how powerful community is. And so what we do to change ourselves and to shift our perspective on life really has a huge impact on all those people that are surrounding us, like your husband and your son and your dog, Oscar, and my two kids and our third one. We're going to have a third boy
Oh, wow, congrats.
coming up, and my wife, and just bringing that into the space makes a huge difference for people, and so that's just something that came up for me that I wanted to share. And that being said, you're going to be putting on some clinics for the Paddle Splash Festival, which is in Rancho Cordova here in Northern California. And that's in July. It's the end of July. And I know you're doing a couple on the 26th of July. Can you talk a little bit about your coaching and your SUP stroke? Is it called the SUP stroke school? Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your SUP stroke school, and why you'd love to see people come out and join you. I mean, I would love to be there. I think it'd be amazing to be in your presence. So,
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so I, compete professionally in stand-up paddling, and this is not a sport that really pays its athletes, so I also coach other athletes in stand-up paddling. And so I do offer one-on-one coaching that's a very holistic approach to coaching, and I actually call it holistic paddle coaching because we look at not just your physical training, but your nutrition, your mindset, the whole body balance aspect of your performance and how you show up and how you feel about the process and the journey of training. And then I also have a group coaching program, and that's a SUP stroke school, and that's where I focus a lot of my time and energy is working with the athletes inside there. And what I really do is I help paddlers paddle faster, longer, and pain-free. That's a big one for me. Been through a lot of injuries, worked through a lot of pain, and I'm really big on using proper body mechanics. So that the technique, the stroke technique, and that's why it's a SUP stroke school, because it's really focused on not just the training. It does include training programs for paddle and for strength, but on the technique and learning how to paddle with proper body mechanics to paddle faster and with more power, with more efficiency, but also getting out of pain so that you really are enjoying it and not getting injured. And so I also host clinics and camps and retreats, and the next clinics that I'm doing are actually just 2 weeks from now in the UK. I'm doing a series of clinics over there. And then in July, I'll be in California, at the Paddle Splash Water and Wellness Festival. And I'll be doing 4 different clinics there and kind of touching on everything, on stroke technique, on some sprints and skills. We're doing a sports nutrition seminar, and then the mindset and race preparedness. So really touching on all those aspects because they're also important. So I'm really excited for that. Yeah, that's the last weekend in July, the 25th, 6th, 7th, I think are the dates. And I'm really active on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, mostly as Seychelle.sup. Oh, I have an app and it's totally free to join. And it's the Seychelle SUP. You can look it up on the Google Play or App Store, or there's a link on my Instagram bio that you can click to download the app and join as a free member. And that's where I host all of my group programs and drill videos and all sorts of all the resources that I have to help support becoming a better, stronger, faster, pain-free paddler.
Yeah, well, your stuff is it's so clean and looks so great. I love the app. I downloaded it last night and was playing around on it, and yeah, it's so neat. It's such a great resource for paddlers, and those of you that are in that Northern California area, or you want to take a trip to Northern California. It is a beautiful place, and at that time of year, it's so it's warm, the water's great, and you've got a world champion paddleboarder, Seychelle, who's going to be there, and like I said, just being in your presence is worth the price of admission, not to mention all the amazing things that you're going to learn from those programs that weekend. So Paddle Splash is what you want to look up. And I'll put that in the show links. I'll also put links to Seychelle's website, and I'm going to put links to her Instagram. I love your Instagram too, Seychelle, because you take a lot of time to actually write something with every post. So it's not just a picture. There's a lot of depth to it. And I always get something from those posts. And so y'all jump on, follow Seychelle SUP, and yeah, get some good information, some good vibes in your life. And let's start shifting from discipline to devotion. What do you say?
I love it. Thank you so much. This was such a great chat, Nick.
And we look forward to seeing you in Northern California in July.
Yeah, I really look forward to meeting you and seeing you there. Thank you so much, Nick.
You got it. Hey, everybody, Play Hard and Love Big Radio is dedicated to bringing you the inspirational people and stories to help you connect to your center so that you can go live your most purposeful and passionate life. This is the official podcast of Spotted Dog Yoga and SUP based out of Folsom, California. Remember to check out Seychelle and Seychelle SUP at the Paddle Splash Festival in Northern California at the end of July. You got to be there, people. Thank you so much, Seychelle, for making it happen today. You're amazing. Big thumbs up. I appreciate you.